Indiscipline identified as missing link in Nigeria's educational sector.
We need to enforce discipline because before exam is set, it is leaked already.
NDLEA arrests 8 suspected drug dealers in covert operation in Kogi State.
Illegal buildings risk demolition as Osun State government begins dredging of waterway.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on electronic financial fraud.
Just recently, the nation's media space was inundated with reports of Nigerians being involved in internet fraud both within and outside Nigeria.
Now, even more worrisome was the news that 77 of 18 persons accused of electronic financial fraud by the Federal Bureau of Investigation of the United States are Nigerians.
Yes, and you are right, Kingsley, because a few days ago, one of the Nigerian suspects was apprehended in Ilori, the Kwara State capital, by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, which is collaborating with the FBI to effect arrest of the suspects across the country.
That's right, Kirian. Now, similar arrests have also been made in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, Owerri, Imo State, Lagos, and indeed Edo State, all linked to the ongoing collaborative investigations by the EFCC and the FBI.
Of course, reports indicate that some of the young men with questionable sources of living and some of the suspects also who are on the FBI list are already trying to escape to other countries like the United Arab Emirates, Ghana and Gambia, while others are going underground to evade arrest.
That's right, Kirian. Apart from the men, I think at least one woman has also been picked up. But the good news, however, is that the EFCC has vowed to fish out all those Nigerians indicted in the recent United States wire scam, which really cast aspersions on the image of Nigeria, in spite of the efforts being made to deal with financial crimes in the country.
You're quite right, but thankfully, President Muhammadu Buhari set the record straight while in Japan recently, that the few Nigerians indulging in criminality abroad do not represent the values and reputation of the vast majority of Nigerians. And as those bad eggs cannot define our reputable identity as a people.
Absolutely. Now, Nigerians are known to be amongst the best professionals around the world. Doctors, engineers, scientists, and academics, to mention a few. And then one, of course, will wonder why just also an infinitesimal number of Nigerians will choose to defraud rather than channel their online skills into legitimate, productive ventures that will earn them also legitimate income and help build our nation.
Yes, it's really surprising, Kingsley, and we had that the modus operandi of the suspected internet fraudsters is to allegedly engage in business, email compromises, bank frauds, romance scams, and schemes targeting the elderly and defrauding them of millions of dollars.
Well, the question is, should the internet or globalization, as it were, be seen as a blessing or a curse in view of these criminal activities being perpetrated by characters such as those who are often referred to as Yahoo boys? Yeah. Now, is ICT facilitating businesses or making businesses go bust? And are there alternatives to addressing the situation? And could inadequate internet security also be responsible for the successes being recorded by these criminal elements? What other factors are responsible for the involvement of young persons in Yahoo?
Yes, Yahoo Yahoo indeed. And they have so many patterns which we will reveal as the program progresses. And just to add a few questions raised here, also, is there any hope that these fraudsters could channel their talents into more positive ventures that can aid the society? Should we place the blame on degenerated societal values? So many questions to ask as many seek to understand the rationale behind this ugly development.
All right, Kirian, those are very pertinent questions. But Kirian, I think that it's also advisable for us to begin to warn ourselves going forward. Already we are seeing the increased role of electronic transactions in our economy. And some of the victims of the Yahoo Yahoo boys are elderly persons, whose retirement savings are often cleaned out by these fraudsters. And you can see we have also revised our pension system. Increasingly, you will find that those transactions will also be electronic. Now, to what extent might our own transactions in old age be exposed to these criminal elements, assuming they are still around at that time?
And if you are carrying out any financial transaction via your telephone or any other electronic device, be rest assured that you cannot be sure 100% what is happening until you understand the methodology or the approach that they are using. They have so many systems, there is a triangular pattern. That's what I call clean fraud pattern. They have names for that, depending on what I've configured to be able to lure you into, doing business with them.
Okay, well, of course, those are the issues that we shall be raising with our experts in our conversation segment on the program today. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I would like to thank you for tuning in. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
Yeah, and I am Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us this morning. And as always, we will bring you other segments that will form part of the package: newspaper review, business, sports, and others. For now, we have the morning news, and we have our colleague Nolene Abel Ame. Hello, Nolene.
Hi, Kirian. Good morning to you and Kingsley, and good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. Primate of the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion, Most Reverend Nicholas Oko, has identified discipline as the missing link in the quest for improved quality in Nigeria's education system. He made the remark during the dedication of the Anglican International Academy.
We need to enforce discipline, because before exam is set, it is leaked already. And people copy. So if Nigerians want to really have quality education, we must enforce discipline in the home, discipline in the school. Any teacher or lecturer who is known to have leaked exams must be dealt with summarily.
Plateau State farmers and youth have many reasons to smile as the Central Bank of Nigeria is set to give a loan of 1.5 billion under the Accelerated Agriculture Development Scheme, AADS. Mr. Yusuf Dunia, branch controller CBN, dropped the good news when he led members of the Financial Inclusion Committee on a courtesy call on Governor Simon Lalong at the Government House, Little Rayfield, Jos.
Enable them to train prospective entrepreneurs in the state. The training may not be that expensive, but to them it is very expensive.
Governor Lalong also asked for the CBN to order commercial banks to revert to closing hours of 4 p.m. since peace has returned to the state. He says the people of Plateau State are shortchanged from participating in banking activities.
CBN, the bank stopped working, and they closed by 3. I addressed this matter with the CBN governor, and I see that the banks are still closing by 3. Just Plateau State, there is relative peace now in the state.
12 filling stations and liquefied petroleum gas plants have been sealed by the Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, in Nasarawa State for non-compliance and adherence to safety regulations.
We are on our tool to make sure that all illegal activities in the oil industry is being checkmate. And we are always on surveillance activities in and out within the state capital and also the local government headquarters.
Osun State government has commenced dredging of rivers and waterways in the state as part of measures to stop flooding. The state governor, while inspecting the dredging in Osogbo, says some buildings may be demolished in the process as the exercise is a proactive steps to prevent reoccurrence of flooding. The government appeals to the residents to desist from dumping refuse on waterways. Officials of the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, FAN, at the Minna Airport have refuted claims of crash landing by a Minna-bound Boeing 747 aircraft from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The Minna Airport manager, Ahmad Adamu, made the clarification after leading NTA News crew around facilities at the airport.
Nothing happened. It's just the mass air that has some technical hitches. And the flight is on ground and they are trying to take care of it.
We heard a noise, like the train is galloping, something like galloping. Then later we were there praying. So suddenly we heard a crack, like as if something scratched on the ground. Then the plane bent, then regained balance and then went to the other side and then regained balance again.
Internally displaced persons in the 9 local governments affected by the activities of bandits in Katsina State have continued to receive relief materials from government and individuals in the state. The gesture is aimed at complementing federal government's effort in that direction.
It is part of the duty on us to ensure that we sympathize with the people, and we try to give out whatever we can afford to give out to help the people that were dispersed from their villages.
The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Kogi State, has arrested 8 suspected dealers of cannabis in Ogolijo community of Igalamela Odulu local government area of the state. The combined operation was led by the Commandant Idris Bello.
We have been working on them, for some time now. So, and that was why you could see that when we were coming here, we went straight to their houses. We came straight here because we had intelligence and we have been working on this thing for a very long time. So we monitored them, we monitored their activities, and before we now felt that now we should come before they will harvest this thing.
That's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Kieran after this break. Thank you for watching.
Aerial Assurance Challenge.
Oh, thank you. But what assurance can you give our daughter?
Everything. With the new look Aerial, I can even do the laundry.
Prove it then.
Okay. Let's make this stain even tougher. Now, let's wash the cloth with your detergent and with New Look Aerial. Do you believe me now? Aerial, now in a New Look pack.
Getting around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 4 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
There's a smarter way to live with Airtel Binge Plan, the ideal data plan for those heavy data moments. Get a 2 GB daily binge plan for 500 Naira. Dial *141# to activate. Live smarter with data.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Digital studio equipment is a critical aspect of modern television that requires special skills for their operation and maintenance. These skills define the content and output of television and are acquired only through professional training and experience. NTA TV College JOS is organizing a special 4-week intensive course on digital studio equipment maintenance for engineers and technical officers in public and private television stations. The course will equip participants with modern techniques, technologies, and skills for effective and efficient operation and maintenance of digital studio equipment. Also, a special 4-week course on intermediate photojournalism and photography will run simultaneously. It is an essential course for photojournalists, photographers, public relations, and information officers to upscale their skills and capacities in photojournalism. Participants will be equipped with modern skills in photo editing, studio, and outdoor lighting, and more in just a few weeks. The venue for both courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. Date 16 September to 11th October 2019. Course fee 100,000 naira only per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please, did you hear that?
Of course I did. That is Village Headmaster tune.
Yeah? So, Auntie Amebo was not gossiping then?
Village Headmaster is celebrating 50 years.
50? Already? This is not a joke.
It is a national celebration. NTA and Village Headmaster family are commemorating 50 years.
Hey, please, tell me, when is our Golden Jubilee?
It is from the 8th to 11th of October, 2019.
I have to go and get ready. It's time to party.
Women. But we, men, will be there too.
Watching Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest television network, the NTA. Time for some business reports as financial experts are speaking on the fate of Nigerian businesses in South Africa. Plus, Nigeria Immigration Service releases guidelines for the continuing e-registration of foreigners in Nigeria. Details of the stories with our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
Financial experts have raised concerns about the viability of the free trade agreement, considering trade tensions and economic disintegration across the continent, with particular reference to the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in South Africa, which they say have affected their businesses. They, however, commended government's prompt action to resolve the situation.
South Africa and Kenya are where investors establish their main office in Africa. And then they now open up outposts in places like Nigeria.
The one thing that is most paramount for any business to survive is security. If your security is not guaranteed, you will pull out. The moment these Nigerians begin to leave South Africa and return to Nigeria because they perhaps have no other destination to go, it's going to tell significantly positively on our economy, because they're going to bring in their business, because they're going to bring in their capital, because they're going to bring in their expertise, and it will tell negatively on the economy of South Africa. So security is very key, and the South African government needs to understand this.
And for the week ended 6th September 2019, investors lost 184.49 billion naira week on week, with the Nigerian Stock Exchange all-share index dipping by minus 1.38% to close the week negative. And beginning from today, Monday the 9th of September, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and the Central Bank of Nigeria will no longer accept non-digital licenses, certificates of permits issued by NAFDAC for the processing on the Nigerian Single Window Trade Portal of the importation of products regulated by the agency. The regulated products comprise of foods, drugs and cosmetics, medical devices, packaged water, chemicals and detergents. In view of this, only digital forms of import permits issued by NAFDAC will be used for the processing of import transactions, and subsequently integrated e-permits and e-form is required for import processing on the Nigerian Trade Portal. And the Nigerian Immigration Service has also released guidelines for the e-registration of foreigners in Nigeria. The new guideline states the provision of information and requirements for migrants residing in Nigeria, including the enrollment and biometrics data capture and the receipt of an acknowledgement slip. The registration process ends 31st of December 2019, and failure to comply will attract penalty.
Thank you, Comfort, for that business package. We appreciate that. Now, next on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyebe, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kyria.
Good morning, Bayo.
Welcome. I hope you had a pleasant weekend.
Yes, very much.
Okay, we have a number of newspapers here to review this morning. Let's go to Blueprint, newspaper. Below the nameplate, and of course on the right-hand side of the nameplate as well, we have some stories there. $2.7 billion liability to ESO and Shell. A U.S. court acquits NNPC. It's on page 34. And below that, 100 days, Ganduje scoops Best Governor Award. It's on page 16. And Tiv Jukun crisis. Federal government, governors, others, okay, massive security forces deployment in the area. It's on page 6. Now, 16-year-old Zamfara girl sells self ablaze. It's on page 40. Now, xenophobia, that's for the lead story. Xenophobia, that's the kicker. Serap writes African Commission seeks $10 billion for victims. With 2 riders, over 400 Nigerians ready for evacuation. Act Now, Action Aid urges African government and AU. The details can be found on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. Now, below the photo story here, we have politicians fueling religious crisis in Nigeria, says Sultan. It's also on page 16. Benue pensioners hold church service at Government House gate, vow to stay until paid, in page 13. Federal government spends 1.8 billion naira on malnutrition in 18 states. It's on page 32. INEC unveils new communication policy. Also on page 32. FIBA World Cup. D Tigers feast on Chinese team, pick Olympics ticket. That's a good one. That's on page 46. That's it for Blueprint.
Okay, let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. The front page is pretty busy. The lead story is on the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. 1 killed in South African fresh attack. The federal government begins evacuation with 3 riders there, 400 Nigerians ready to return home. Hoodlums insist foreigners must go. Nigerians in detention for visa violations to be repatriated. Details can be found on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Now, below that, there are a number of other headlines. Let's take a couple of them. It said, men jailed 7 years for defrauding U.S. consulate. And 3 protesting pensioners die in Benue. And that's attributed to the chairman. Details on page 16. And Kogi governor picks Edward Onoja, that's his chief of staff, as running mate. Now, above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, let's take also a few of the headlines. It says, excess crude account depleted by 6.48 trillion naira in 7 years. That's on page 37. Politicians causing and fueling religious crisis, says Sultan. That's on page 7. And on page 2, I contemplated suicide after leaving office. And this is attributed to the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Adoke. Now, this is on page 2 in greater detail of the Punch newspaper. The story is excerpted from his memoirs, known as the Burden of Service. Part of it, if you permit me to just read this, and this is quite instructive. He said he had contemplated suicide, but that he decided to live and tell his story on account, according to him, of the stories that had gone around as to how corrupt he allegedly was, the torture and torment that he was suffering psychologically. But he said he decided to live and tell his story. So those are the headlines from the front page of the Punch newspaper. 2 earpieces, by the way, before I bring in bio. Rape, Dakolo sues Fatoyinbo and demands apology in newspapers. And federal government panel submits report on Pinnick, Odua, and 21 others. That's on page 30. Bio.
Yeah, let's start with the continuation of the demonstration in South Africa. Zulu camp hostel dwellers commenced demonstration again on Sunday. This time around, they marched to the east of Johannesburg and they were chanting that illegal African migrants must leave South Africa. The marchers carried knob carries and marched to Julius Park. They were addressed by Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who drew their attention and told them that what they are doing is a violation of human rights and also the South African Constitution. It says that some African nationals have also bonded together in self-defense. The police in Gauteng area said that 5 persons were injured and 1 person was unfortunately killed. And the spokesman for the hostel dwellers, Sifiwe Molongo, said that we are not happy with what government has done to resolve the problem. He says that government must explain why it is going with foreign nationals who are here illegally. They also want the foreign nationals that are taking their jobs to leave. We also are not happy about the issues of drugs as well as ownership of RDP houses which foreigners are taking. 5 persons were injured, 1 was killed. Nigerian Union in South Africa has called on all Nigerians to avoid and stay away from hotspots. Meanwhile, the Nigerian mission in South Africa has indicated that so far 400 Nigerians have indicated the interest to be evacuated to Nigeria. The Consul General, Godwin Adama, says the first batch are likely to be airlifted on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the High Commissioner, Kabir Bala, says that Nigerians that have registered and those without travel documents will be issued travel certificates to enable them be evacuated. You remember that the Air Peace has volunteered with aircraft to evacuate them from South Africa.
Yeah, and the New Telegraph has it here as the federal government evacuates 400 Nigerians with some riders there. Air Peace leaves first batch from South Africa Wednesday. Mission provides emergency travel certificates, as Bayo just said, to Nigerians who have lost our means of livelihood, South Africans to foreigners. Leave our country. All right. This is
the other critical story is the quotation from the Sultan, who was...
Bayo, just before you leave this subject matter, I think 2 significant developments in the wake of the renewed attacks by South Africans against black foreigners who are living in their country, according to them, and asking them to leave. Yesterday, and in fact, over the weekend, the kind of positive response you saw from the police authorities, if those responses had been there in the past, perhaps the level of destruction of businesses of these persons might not have taken place. I mean, you could see once, I was watching some of the news channels, from South Africa, private news channels, and you could see the massive deployment of police officers. I mean, in and around some of the hotspots where the Zulu hostel dwellers, were trying to attack foreigners. That's one. Secondly, the attempt by the political leader of the Zulus, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is quite old now, to also intervene is to be commended, even though he was ignored by some of the hostel dwellers. Some of those hostel dwellers are usually very, roughnecks. Let's put it as simple as that. If you know the kind of crisis that they fomented in the period leading up to South Africa's overthrowing the apartheid regime, you would know the kind of persons that they usually are. There are also migrants from KwaZulu-Natal into the mines in and around the Johannesburg area. So it's significant to see that, critical leaders are now stepping in, not the kind of comments that we were hearing in the past.
But some would say that it's late in the day because this xenophobia attack started years ago, and they didn't take such decisions in the past. And now that it has come to a point where even some Nigerians and other foreigners are volunteering to leave South Africa. Yes. So it's late in the day. But of course, there are Nigerians and other foreigners who have established big-time businesses in South Africa. They have ownership of industries, companies that are doing very well. These are legitimate people who are doing legitimate business in South Africa. But the few of them who may be involved in drug trafficking and other vices, may have triggered the entire thing. But of course, like Kingsley said, look, all those politicians who are speaking now ought to have done that in the past.
Long time, yes. Already the special envoy by Mr. President has returned. Ambassador Ahmed Abubakar has come to brief the president, and he also conveyed greetings from President Ramaphosa, who says that the relations between Nigeria and South Africa continues to be strong, and they are going to do all that is possible to ensure that the relationship, for as far as Africa is concerned, ensure that Africa is at peace with itself.
Part of this issue of relationship between Nigeria and South Africa on account of the xenophobic attacks, you heard the comments last week, and so we also responded to it on this program, plus other concerned Nigerians, including, of course, Nigeria's foreign minister, who was responding to the claim by the South African foreign affairs minister that Nigerians who are in South Africa are drug dealers. You saw the stories that emerged at the weekend that a former South African High Commissioner to Singapore, a lady who used to be a flight cabin attendant on South African Airways, was actually a drug courier convict. She was sentenced, she served jail time in New York. She served jail time in New York because she carried cocaine into New York. Earlier, before that, she had also been apprehended and was being tried for importing heroin, for couriering heroin from Thailand into South Africa. We were talking about, this.
See, there's no way that business can thrive without local
collaborators,
players, without local players, because there are people that know the nooks and crannies of the area, and they can traffic the drug. Because when you import, you now need to circulate. You need to circulate. You need to have, the street guys that will now do the final distribution, to the...
So, we also raised the question, where are the drug busts in South Africa? And who are those that have been apprehended? If they have been apprehended and they serve their jail term on account of conviction, you deport them if they are not your nationals. But in the case of this South African who worked on South African Airways, even after she has served her jail terms, on account, apparently, of her political connection, she was appointed South Africa's High Commissioner to Singapore.
Can you imagine?
But it was an exclusive story by the Sunday Times of Johannesburg that revealed all of this, and then she was recalled.
And what we should note, actually, is that corruption is not just in Nigeria. There's corruption elsewhere.
That's right.
We were talking about the crime busters of South Africa. Where have they been all this while? If such a trade could thrive on the streets of South Africa?
I think the outrage from the world, from the African Union, from the United Nations, and all nations around the world, has embarrassed South Africa, and they are forced now to become the latest African apartheid, because the apartheid that the world rescued them from is exactly what they are now fostering on their fellow Africans. But let's go to the other story I was talking about. Religious crisis in Nigeria are blamed on politicians, and guess who said this? The Sultan of Sokoto, Syed Abubakar III, said that people should shun religious crisis. He stressed that the Bible, the Quran, were not political books and did not and do not belong to any political party. He was speaking at an intra-religious council function in Akure. The Sultan enjoined people to shun politicians and avoid people who politicize religion for selfish interests. He was hosted by the G of Akure, Oba Alade Toyin Alade Lucy. Nobody, he says, could claim to love God without loving his or her neighbor, whether he is a Muslim or Christian. He also inaugurated a mosque at the palace of Deji of Akure. The other issue is the proposed procession by the members of the Shiite group, which is causing a lot of consternation. The police has issued warning that IMN remains banned, and therefore they should stop the procession. Actually, the 9th and 10th of the first month of the Islamic calendar, which is Muharram, is usually for celebration. There are two sides to it. For the other Islamic groups, it is a day that marks the remembrance of when Noah disembarked from the ark, and also the day for which Musa led the Israelites across the Red Sea. This incidentally is also celebrated by the Israelites as Yom Kippur. The Muslims call it Yom Ashura, and they call it Yom Kippur. But for the Shiite, it is the celebration of Imam Hussein, who is a grandson of the Prophet, who was killed in Karbala. And therefore, they use the day as a day of mourning, and as a day for why sometimes they chain themselves and use metal to hit their forehead so much so that they bleed. But of recent, they have absorbed that ceremony and use it as an occasion to donate blood. However, for Nigeria, what usually happens is that there's always a long procession, people walking from Kano all the way by the road to Zaria, and it causes a lot of discomfort. In fact, an Islamic scholar in Kaduna once said that there was a day he had to go and deliver a lecture in Dutse. He traveled to Dutse, delivered the lecture 2 hours, and still came back and met the procession still on the highway. Because of that, vehicles had to all converge on one way, and there was terrible hold-up. People traveling from Sokoto to Enugu, all of them were so. So he said that such should not be encouraged because it causes a lot of inconveniences, and that is what is likely to happen.
Yeah, well, Bayo and Kirian, considering the recent occurrences, particularly involving members of the IMN, that Islamic movement in Nigeria, and the security forces, which of course in Abuja here we saw what happened, the burning of facilities belonging to NEMA, and then the killing of a senior police officer. And the fact that the leadership of the IMN are persons who have also had cause to engage with the authorities. It is advisable that this is not a time for any confrontation. If the police authorities say that they cannot provide, security or will not tolerate that because it might be hijacked, then I think that, Kirian, it's advisable to avoid any bloodbath. Let the religious leaders speak to their members and indicate that, look, this is not an attempt to suppress, your observance of your religious rights.
Okay, now
to editorial. Before you take the editorial,
editorial. Of course, we have
just a lead story.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The lead story.
Okay.
This is coming from Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story says 8 months after commissioning, multi-billion naira Barrow port dormant.
We've discussed this issue a number of times on this program, the issue of having other ports opened up, to ease, the
congestion in Lagos.
Yes, the congestion at the Lagos port. But, there was one thing one of the guests told us here some time ago, Kinsley. He said that it is the person that owns a consignment that determines where it goes. If you want Lagos, that's where it goes. If you want Port Harcourt, that's where it goes. So that may mean that it's not necessarily because it's not functional, but because persons who are involved in shipping business do not want to use it.
Well, it's a facility that is available. It's just like also the export processing zones. It is to enhance a rapidity of goods services from the port and also help decongest the port. But if we don't take advantage of it, then it means that the facility will waste. But for the case of Barrow, don't forget that the River Niger was dredged to enable ships to travel up country, up to as far as Lokoja, and if possible, up to Barrow, so that port goods, heavy duty equipment that is killing our highway can come by way of the river.
All right, editorial for today is on xenophobia, which of course we have, touched in the course of the newspaper review. South Africa government, xenophobic attacks, and federal government's response.
Well, quickly, there's also this story that I wanted to draw attention to. The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal is expected to deliver its judgment any time from now. And this is because by virtue of Section 134, 2 and 3 of the Electoral Act, the 190 days meant for the case to be disposed of is likely to end by September 15th. And so the judge has reserved judgment. And so between now and September 15th, the lawyers must be contacted for judgment. Otherwise, it will lapse. Talking about the editorial now, it's just what we've been discussing, this xenophobic attack. Well, South Africans are now beginning to realize that the outcry from the world has put them back in the area of apartheid where they were at the receiving end. They have now, like the Punch described the other day, the latest xenophobic attack is the latest apartheid from South Africa. And apparently, it is pushed by the migrant workers, particularly the Zulu, who are known to be very, very violent and very wild. Yeah. And their grouse is three. First of all, they say that foreigners are there illegally. Secondly, they are taking the jobs that is meant for them. And thirdly, some of them are also involved in drugs. And what I quickly remember is one of the witty expressions of late President Robert Mugabe, who says that if a doctor is working in South Africa, it will be very foolish for any illiterate person in South Africa to lament that the doctor is taking his job.
When he's not qualified to do the job.
So what is happening is that you find out that those who actually are the lower rung of the people, who actually have poor or no education at all, are the ones who are feeling envious of those who have come to the country to work. There's no gainsaying the fact that there are elements of drug trafficking that is going on, but the police must be up and doing. Those who are involved in that should be arrested and tried and sentenced accordingly. However, they should do all they can not to forget that the whole of Africa was at their support, and they should not be the one that should be disparaging Africans in their own country now. Okay,
and the federal government, of course, is responding the way and manner it should at the moment until the envoy briefs the president. Nigerians will now know the direction of the federal government on this matter.
The federal government will make pronouncement, but their indication to South Africa is still encouraging and wanting Mr. President to visit in October, with the hope that most of the issues will be settled. Diplomatic relations will be strengthened, and hopefully they will use it to solve this current problem.
All right, Bayo, at this point, we'd like to thank you for your analysis. We hope to see you again tomorrow for another round of a newspaper review. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, too.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break, but when we come back, of course, we'll be looking at e-fraud.
It is here again. The NTA ETV Annual Expo is here again. This time, it is the 13th edition. 2019 has as its theme, promoting unity and innovations in youths as agents of change through science and arts. It promises to be captivating as youths across the nation showcase their unique skills and innovations in science and arts, make new friends, and showcase their rich cultural heritage. Join us at the NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja, from Sunday, 28th October to Thursday, 24th October, 2019. For more information, participation, and sponsorship, please call these numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Helen!
Hey, where's your mom?
Today is her toilet day.
What?
Helen!
Toilet day?
Tomorrow you're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation.
Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with all this, it still won't be party ready.
Impossible!
Challenge? New Ticker Half X10X. Even if you use this solution 10 times, it won't give you the same cleaning like Harpic.
Its new thicker formulation sticks to the bowl better, removes old stains, and gives you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow!
New Harpic 10X
Gives me the freedom from toilet day.
New Harpic 10X for 10 times better cleaning.
All right, now, to, of course, start off the conversation this morning on Good Morning Nigeria, let's take a correspondence report on the matter. And here is Serafina Okon with the package.
Everybody want to make billions overnight, just quick money, and which is not possible anywhere in the world.
Anybody who goes into internet fraud or any kind of electronic fraud is actually doing it because of his own selfish and self-centered interest and the desire to cheat other people to earn a living.
As far as I'm concerned, if our youth continue like this, we don't have leaders of tomorrow.
If you travel around the world, Nigerians were seen as bad people. The country has been damaged for a very long time. Even if you go to other countries, they will see you as a bad person, a foreigner and other things like that. But your government can come around and create jobs for youths who are not doing anything. At least I think it will reduce it.
Nigerians' image outside is now redeeming back to its lost glory. You understand? Based on the fight that the current government is doing to fight corruption.
Most of those people, in one way, they also use VPN. And that VPN is a kind of software that makes you might be chatting with the person in the next room, but he will be using that VPN and set the country code and the country identity to America, a specific state in America, and he will be chatting with you. They even go as far as forging an international line. It's actually not everybody that knows who they are chatting with, even when the conversation is actually not the type they should involve themselves in.
All right, now those were some reactions there from respondents to questions put together by our correspondent Serafina Okon on the issue of electronic financial fraud. We have with us three guests in the studios to discuss this issue in further detail. First, let's welcome Mr. Kanu Idago. He is the head Advanced Fee Fraud Unit at the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. Mr. Idago, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right. Also here with us in the studios, we'd like to welcome Mr. Kasim Sodengi. Sodengi is National Coordinator, National Office for Nigerian Content Development in ICT at NITDA. That's the National Institute for Technology Development Agency. A pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be here.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is an economist and CEO, Global Analytics Consulting, fairly familiar face on the program, Mr. Tokwe Fashwa. Mr. Fashwa, a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Kieran.
Yeah, gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the program. Let me begin with Kanu Idago, who is directly involved in advanced fraud, security. Now, what is electronic financial fraud, and why has it gained momentum over the years?
I will start by talking about how it evolved in the first place. The internet, in Nigeria, the internet was introduced in the mid-90s. And basically it was used by multinationals at the time. And access or service was through Nitel. Subscription was very expensive at the time. And then later on, licenses were given to internet service providers, and people had more access. It was less expensive at the time. So it progressed, and at some point, the proliferation of the ISPs and cybercrime made it accessible to many people. And then more significantly, the GSM technology and data service now made it available to generality of the people. So at that point in time, people had more access to the internet. And about 42% of the world population definitely is connected to the internet. In Nigeria, with a population of over 180 million, we had 55% of the population were also connected. So the internet itself, changed so many things, the way we communicate, transact businesses at that point, and also the way we access data, and even the way we fight wars. So basically, our banking system also migrated from analog to internet-based banking. And we started doing ATM withdrawals and making online transfers. And then government itself also went online as well, the e-governance and the IPPS also. And even our educational sector also moved. We had online courses. So everything was done on the internet. And also, the crime and criminal activities also moved online as well. And that was what gave birth, to advanced field fraud scam. So advanced field fraud scam at the point was limited to people sending fictitious and fraudulent business solicitations to people outside the country. And then it developed, to this stage where we have cyber criminals involved in hacking, phishing, and the rate at which they are doing it now is so much, and I think it's a cause for concern.
Okay, Mr. Kanu Dagu, thank you very much. I'm sure for our viewers, you will see that we have qualified our conversation this morning by saying electronic financial fraud, because as Mr. Dagu was saying, we do know that before the explosion in access to the internet, there was also the 419, which started growing in leaps and bounds in the early 90s, the so-called wash, come and buy, and so on and so forth. But today, as we said, we are focusing on electronic financial fraud. Kasim Sodengi, give us a sense on the basis of what you know, of course, from the ICT sector. It would appear that, as we are seeing an exponential growth in access to the internet and utilization of e-platforms and e-sources for not just government purposes, for private and our everyday lives, we're having this tracking that is also coming in terms of an explosion in the rise of financial frauds. What's happening? Is the world at risk?
Thank you very much. And that's a good question, because it's important that we do not act shocked or surprised when we see the tendencies globally. And I would emphasize that they're global tendencies, in some cases far more advanced than what we're struggling or grappling with. We're seeing warfare being conducted through cyberspace, and it's a major drain on economies globally. But the emphasis has to move from why to what should we be doing. Credit must be given to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, NFIU, and all the agencies of government that are prosecuting cyber crimes. There's been a huge emphasis on cyber crimes with even the Cyber Crimes Act that has sort of delineated the crimes and have apportioned sort of responsibility and so on. But emphasis must move to cyber security. It is almost like in common parlance with our daily lives. As new vistas open, either we build houses or build communities, we must then pay attention to how do we, on the on the short, mid, and long term, and using other intricate understanding of society, how do we fortify these network systems that our lives are increasingly dependent on? If you talk about artificial intelligence to personal, what they call PIDs, personal identifiers that are online, and the fact that economies simply exist, and we will see digital currencies online, as a world, as a country, as an economic bloc, the emphasis must move to how do we consistently evolve rules, processes, systems to protect this new migration of our lives to online platforms. It is not different. Sometimes policy, conversations, actions are usually slower than technology. Some people seize the initiative for many reasons, which I'm sure we will talk about and touch on during this show, to become criminals or take advantage of the scenario. But the challenge before all of us is how do we move quickly to begin to institutionalize, deepen, sharpen our capabilities in protecting systems online. There are other aspects of it which I hope we will talk about. There's the responsibility of regulators, the responsibility of those in financial services industry. We must also evolve new rules around ethics and responsibility. You know, we must morph as society and challenges and threats morph. That is the challenge really before us as a country and as a nation.
Yeah, Kasim, as we make progress, we'll be asking some specific questions because if you watch the background, one of the respondents was talking about the VPN.
Yes.
Right, you know, which is a special kind of software that I utilize. It doesn't sell your data, but you know it protects your privacy, you know, while you are chatting. So, and there are also other aspects of this, like identity theft. We have chargeback, friendly fraud, clean fraud, right? Triangular, merchant identity fraud. So these are, you know, the classifications of what they do, because you know they are patterned. So by the time I will return to you, we will be able to tell us how these things function, how they operate. Now, let's ask Mr. Tobe Falsoa to tell us the implication of this to the economy. Of course, you have listened to the other gentlemen who have made input already. Now, what is the implication of it? Because from what Kasim said, there is no running away from that. It's a system that has been, in fact, it's global, and we need to fashion out how to deal with it. So what's the implication of this on the economy?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Of course, we, like Kasim has said, and Kalu before him, you know, the implications for us as a society, it's encompassing, you know. Everybody is now trading online. Sometimes I imagine, what if the internet went down? Even all of us here will be in distress. Under a day, seriously, you'd see that, in fact, there's so many things you want to do, things you can't actually reach out to anymore. And that's the vulnerability of countries like ours, because a lot of this, like Google, for example, the entire servers are somewhere in the US, you know, and where we don't even have a say. So we get what they give us. However, regarding this cyber fraud and electronic fraud, you know, it's just a bit unfortunate that where we are right now is a scenario where a lot of our youths who are misguided and in a hurry to make it, and because we haven't actually had that rhetoric coming from leaders to say that, look, there's dignity in labor. When some of us were growing up, and some of you who are older than us, you know, there was dignity in labor, and there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. And I still tell people till today, there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. If you
explain that to a younger viewer so that they would know
yes,
what 9 a.m. to 5
there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. There's nothing absolutely wrong with waking up in the morning, putting up a good day's work, wherever it is that I've deemed it, you know, to employ you, closing at 5, 6, 7, you know, putting in 5, 10 years with an employee, because it builds you. But you see, what we have these days, scenario where people want to, you know, they want to, what they so-called hammer. Everybody's thinking of how to hammer. I mean, you see people leaving school today, and that's Mercedes-Benz you are driving, that Range Rover that you are driving, maybe after 30 years of work, they want to drive, they want to stay in Maitama. Nobody is thinking of, oh, look, let me start in Suleja and be walking my way down. You know, so those are the things. Now, what are the implications to the economy? Unfortunately, whereas we think we're making fast money, we're actually slowing down our economy. Because now we have a lot of trust issues. As we speak right now, I mean, your show before we came on set, you were talking about the backlash in South Africa. Before South Africa, 2 weeks ago, was a huge problem in the United States, 77 Nigerian men, you know, and I think a couple of women are also involved, you know, who were busted for this same issue. You know, some of them, there's what they call the relationship fraud. I mean, they send bulk mail. And mind you, okay, so there's relationship fraud, there's phishing, where they send you all sorts of things in your email. If you click on some things that look too good to be true. So the message is, if it looks too good to be true, it is usually a fraud. If somebody else tells you that you've won $1 million somewhere when you didn't play a lottery, there's lottery fraud, there's NGO fraud. Of course, we know all sorts. Unfortunately for us as Nigerians, there's one thing they call Nigerian fraud. But you see, it is not actually indigenous to Nigeria. As a matter of fact, the truth is that, you know, we are peanut chasers, even in that industry. All right? But we're too loud. We're kind of loud with what we do. We can't justify fraud by any means, unfortunately, what our boys are doing. So what it does is that it kind of constricts our economic space. There are people who will not take you serious. If they ever know that you're from Nigeria, you want to do international business, they shut down on you. What it means is that because of the fraud that some of our boys are doing, and some of our young people are doing, and some people are even old in that business, you know, we're constricting our economic space. Our economy is not able to grow at more than 2%. As I was coming here, I was listening to some of the items on the news. You know, I mean, we're talking of 1.9% economic growth for such an economy. That they said that if they remove South Africa, unfortunately, and Nigeria from the equation in Africa, the rest of the economies are growing at 5%. And so I'm thinking, why would Nigeria be a drag down on the rest of African indices? So if trust is very, very important in business. If we were trusted people, we would probably grow a lot faster. Okay, that's the truth. So we haven't managed, apart from the fact that a lot of our young ones are going into that to make quick money, we also have not managed the PR aspect of that issue very well, such that if you got a job in a lot of the European banks like HSBC, Barclays, Citibank and co, during your orientation, they will teach you what they call the Nigerian fraud. And that Nigerian fraud is the typical 419 that we're talking about, advanced free fraud, bulk emails sent out, and so on. But the truth is that all of these things came from somewhere. We are only riding on it. Sometimes the way we approach is even illiterate in nature. That's the truth. You know, but again, like I said before, all of this thing is dragging down economy. Trust is very, very important in business and in modern society.
I'm not pausing you, but if you read through one of the FBI's reports concerning the latest arrests, you know, they said that most of the schemes originated from Nigeria based on their tracking. You know, that the schemes, you know, the entire ideology, the formation, right, originated in Nigeria. That's the FBI's report. So, yes, it's global, but of course, some of them may have been Nigerianized.
They are Nigerianized, but let me tell you, the big hitters when it comes to economic fraud, right, and this online fraud, you go to Estonia, you go to Hungary, Eastern Europe, Poland, all right, and even a lot of that goes on in Europe in general itself and even in the Americas. The problem I think we have is, you see, we did push back when we could to say, like, why would you teach people a certain thing called Nigerian fraud when it's actually based on what people are able to learn? If I tell you how email fraud was originated, when there was no email, there was a mail fraud. People will say that they are stockbrokers. And then in the US, it was cheap to send out mails. They will do 10,000 letters. And half of the 5,000 will say the stock market is going to go up. The other half will say the stock market will not go up. We are so-so company and we are telling you that this is what we do, right? So when they send those things out, 5,000 goes this way, by the time they have no control of the market. If the market goes up, they focus on those people who they told that the market will go up. They split it in two. They'll tell you the market will go up again or it will go down. By the time you do that the fourth time, some people will start to trust you and say, well, these guys are always getting this thing right. And by that time, that's when you call them to bring in the investment. And of course, you know you're not investing in anything. They're what they call boiler rooms, all right, where people set up, you know, agencies, and all they do is just collect money and tell you that there's a certain stock is going to go up, there's a new discovery in the pharmaceutical industry, and so on. And people trust them. By that time, we were not even in email fraud. We're not even in this 419 thing. All right? So we need to also look at how to balance those two.
We'll come to you to further elaborate on this. Just before we bring in Kanu Idago, Kieran, You know, there's a late Nigerian diplomat, senior citizen, late Ambassador Hamzat Ahmadu. Hamzat Ahmadu served, he was principal secretary to late Sardauna, worked with General Gawan and became Nigeria's ambassador. He was in Russia, Cameroon, and the US, and also in Europe. He said, while he was in the US, that, you know, what you're describing now is referred to as white-collar crimes. White-collar crimes. That there were instances when a few Nigerians were picked up. And the authorities then were wondering, you know, where the Nigerians, you know, got the intellect from, as it were, to participate in white-collar crimes. That these were crimes that were usually, you know, for persons presumably with advanced IQ. Just to buttress the point that Tope Faswa is making. But let's return to this conversation with Kanu Idago. I mean, it's the fact that this is a major challenge that we are facing. But what are the different manifestations of electronic financial fraud? Let's start from our domestic environment before we now take it outside. I'm asking this because sometimes, I'm sure each and every one of us here, you get an email claiming to come from your bank. You know, sometimes they design it to look, to almost look to closely resemble the logo of your bank. But when you now look at the address, there's something that is funny about it. You also get all kinds of funny phone calls from some numbers, +3 something, and you advise them to take it. So what are we dealing with here? First, on the domestic front, before, you know, the bad boys take it outside our shores.
Okay. Cybercrime basically has been on the increase in Nigeria. And right from when the commission was established, it had been a problem. And we have developed a strategy to fight cybercrime. We had developed a strategy to fight cybercrime right from inception when we started. And we discovered the increase over the years and then became a problem. And the exponential increase, it's high on cybercrime activities. It's a cause for concern. And more so, the widespread acceptance by the society is another problem on its own. Because sometimes you see people gather to debate whether cybercrime is good or not. I'm not sure many of them do understand it. But I think it also involves our youth. And our youth are the future of the country. And any nation aspiring for greatness cannot ignore the youth. So what we see is, I think the problem is with the society to see. Because
I'm sorry to jump in again. I'm sorry. Well, fine. This is the sociological aspect that you're trying to explore. We're just saying, how does electronic financial fraud manifest domestically? What would you see, for instance, that it would make you indicate that, look, this is a potential, cybercrime fraud that somebody is trying to perpetrate against you? What are we seeing at home, and then what are we also seeing outside?
Okay, basically at home here, what they do most times is that they try to get financial information from you. That could be through email. And most times, the email is not secured. It's not secured. So you get, like if you're on a pop-up, maybe a pop-up, and you see information coming. You don't click. You don't click. Because the pop-up, if you're interested, you don't click. If you click, it might not be coming from a good source. So it's better you go to the website. So there are several strategies that they adopt. But what they do is to get money. What they do is to get money. That is their chief preoccupation. And that is their interest. So basically at home here, what the EFCC is doing is we have developed a four-pronged strategy, which is intelligence. We gather intelligence on the activities of the fraudsters, and disruption, enforcement, and then education and prevention. That's basically what we're doing. So it's on the rise. And what we should do if you're conducting any business online, you have to be very careful. You have to be careful. Any email requesting for information, people have to be careful. These are some of the areas. But they have even moved beyond that now. What they do is they hack into systems. They hack into systems, and that's what they call phishing. Phishing basically is they claim to be reputable organizations, and then make you believe, then ask for personal information. When you give them this information, what they do is they gain access to your financial information, and they transfer monies from various accounts. So the EFCC is trying so much in this direction. And late last year, the chairman gave a directive. And because that directive, he said it should be a sustained and rigorous raid of areas suspected to be housing fraudsters, and their activities. Because what they've done is they've taken over some of the estates, and they live in estates. And what they do is the fraudsters actually, they take information from people, and they go outside and collect money, obtain money from people outside the country.
Okay,
So,
now, we are going to return to you for some specifics, right? Because you have known the methodology that they put in place, but we also need to also find out whether you have the technicalities or the technical know-how, to track them, because this is electronic business. It's not something you can just sit back as a crime buster and determine how to fight it. And that's why I'm coming to our friend here, Kasim, once again. Kasim, the e-fraudsters have become so sophisticated that they have really mastered the art to the point of disguising any fraudulent conversation, in the system. And some professionals have also said that the VPN, the use of VPN, which is a visual private network that they use.
Virtual.
Exactly, that they use, of course, doesn't sell data, but it protects you, from being detected. So what I'm going to ask you is this: is there any form of technical approach to track fraudulent transactions before they manifest into any crime? Is there a possibility using same IT?
Okay, so it's important that your viewers also understand that technologies are being developed to solve problems. The very VPN you mentioned was developed and enhanced to enable security. But the thing with technology, like every good thing, is that people who are subversive find ways of using it to protect their identity or also perpetuate other crimes. These systems always have vulnerability. If you prod it long enough, it is not foolproof. All technologies have that weakness. And I don't want us to single out the VPN or some system or some capability. Viruses have been with us, Trojan horses, malwares, and so on. Because what has simply happened is that what people have used and developed for positive reasons, others would always use those same things to harm others. That's why the emphasis, as we see technology move at the speed of thought, that's why the emphasis has to move to vigilance and cybersecurity as against cybercrime. Cybercrime in most cases is when the act is being committed or has been committed, that then you don't apprehend people for wanting to commit a crime per se until they've taken steps to do so. So the challenge is with society and regulators and with CSOs and so on to sensitize people on technologies and possible vulnerabilities. That's why you have things like ethical hackers. There are people who are paid to prod and interrogate systems because it is known that a system is developed. All you see is the development you've done, like the VPN. But what simply happens is that the criminal spends an inordinate amount of time investing the amount of time and sheer energy and mind resources they use to break these systems and compromise systems is mind-boggling. But you see, such is the determination of the criminal globally. And it's important then that society, we need to move up, especially now. And Mr. Faso has raised some of these concerns about our lives becoming ones and zeros. What do we do? How is the approach? What can we do? Do we say then that we do not want technology? That cannot be the broad philosophical approach to it. The approach has to be sensitization. For instance, so the common one now that has been the issue is the business email compromise. In most cases in the past, when you put it in layman terms, you see coming from First Bank or some other organization, when you put your cursor on it, it then shows you it's a Yahoo email. You know, they've now moved. So now if it's Sodangi at, you know, Next Nigeria Company, they now put Sodangigi at. So those kind of things are those. And then they've also moved into social engineering. They manage you. They try to understand, you know, for companies who have wide transactions globally, they try to understand your psyche. How do you operate? When do you call your employees? Do you call them 2 p.m. GMT? Do you call them once a day? You know, what's the voice? They even sometimes manage and engineer the voicing so that they say, okay, I've sent you an invoice, quickly pay. And it sounds like you know. So they've moved. The challenge of technology, in truth, is that lies in technology itself and how it is used, use of technology, and non-technology issues.
Along that line,
yes,
can there be a multi-layered cyber source fraud management solution?
Absolutely. I would say systems, not solutions. Solutions are at a lower level. Yeah. There are many solutions being developed, and you see, that's why even when you implement, like NIDA has mandated recently, and the SGF has also issued those statements under the now current Minister for Communication, when he was Director General, ISO 27000 was mandated by the government for all government systems for making sure information security management. You know, there are many systems that, if implemented, will reduce access to external persons having confidential information, which, like Kalu has mentioned, is used to solicit, you know. A lot of times we see that people do not adhere to best practices of information management. Corporate organizations, that's why Nigeria, you know, we don't give Nigeria credit enough sometimes. We have the 2-3 factor authentication. I mean, you don't just swipe a card and take money out. You have to put a PIN. In some cases, you have to use a token. Has made some of our transactions more secure than other even places in the West. You know, and there's need for them to also evolve as these threats evolve. But the challenge is that we must also look at, honestly, I must say that we must also see the challenge with all this bundle of energy we have of young people.
Get into the mind of Yahoo
you know what? So all this bundle of energy, the challenge with our society is that we need to create more opportunities. We must harness these capacities, these talents. We must, if we create this pressure room where everybody has to, there are cultural aspects of it. You know, I saw a tweet recently where someone was mentioning a particular musician whose songs only has celebrated over 12 to 15 people over the years that have been convicted now. You know, they've all been convicted. People he celebrated as social icons. So the huge materialism has to be something that we need to become contrarian and look at. But there are also the challenges of, you see, truly diversifying the economy and looking at, so let me give an example, the Dutch disease, where incomes from oil are disproportionate to other forms of labor. A good example is what Norway did. Norway realized that if we allow the oil income continue flowing into our economy in the early 60s, and they said, listen, guys, we would only allow 4% of our oil income. It seemed like madness when they took that decision. But they knew the moment oil starts trickling down into budgeting and society at that scale, what happens is that incomes become disproportionate. A guy who shines shoes for 5 naira per hour, suddenly somebody goes to the rig and comes back with 150. You just think that your work is not valuable. He buys the flashy. So there are challenges with how our society is structured that we may have to look at, because a lot of the impact you see on technology and also non-technological issues, there are social issues. There are issues that we may have to approach with economics, with other tools, so that we can diffuse and create the opportunities that are required. But I'll just end up by saying that cybersecurity is truly the way to go. Vigilance, being able to understand the challenges, paying attention. You see, we need to become more vigilant. As we use these systems, what do I put online? There's a saying that says, in the cyber world, what goes up doesn't come down. You know, your profile, we're careless. We have all, you know, I Google your name and I see everything, including the last place you went to. We need to become far more vigilant in how we use technology, far more cautious in the kind of information we put online. You know, there are all kinds of things that solicit information from us. But we will need to protect us. The government has evolved the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation issued by NIDA and so many other rules that are coming up. But it lies with us and so sensitizing our society, about cybersecurity, some of which NIDA has done extensively last year and into this year.
Well, you're already on cybersecurity. Let's still focus on that before we bring in Tokwe Faswa from another perspective. You're talking about the fact that people should also try to limit the amount of personal information they put out. I mean, you see, I don't know, is it Facebook or something, all kinds of platforms that people use, saying all kinds of things about themselves. You click on the name and then you see virtually everything. How far can you go? Because some persons will tell you that, we're trying to get some information for positive uses, and they are unable to get that. So how then can you be part of the flow of technology and part of the e-world, as it were?
Okay. Very good question and very important question. So we've seen some of the, recently, NIDA, where I work, issued a Nigeria Data Protection Regulation. It was issued in January 2019, that mandates data controllers, the Facebooks of this world, the banks of this world, everyone who collects personal data of Nigerians, to limit or control or to store personal data using certain systems, using certain methods and observing certain rules. Information must be proportionate to what you need. Information has to, when you're taking more than what you need to notify and seek consent and so on. And we'll see there's rapid enforcement of some of these regulations. But it's also important, as we're seeing globally, from the United States to Europe, where we're seeing increasingly sovereign states are taking very deliberate actions and placing responsibility on intermediaries, like the Facebooks and Googles of this world, asking them to be responsible for what they collect and how it is used. Sometimes the fine prints are too fine for citizens to read, but it is important that also business takes responsibility. But it is the price of vigilance that comes from a government being able to strike the balance between commerce, personal data, and the challenges that may happen. So it is our duty, and I'm happy that even in partnership with the EFCC, NFIU, and so on, we're increasingly seeing the need to speak to multinationals and to speak to people who collect, even our banks. How do you store this personal data? What are where there are breaches, what penalties? We've seen the penalties on Marriott hotels recently, on British Airways, and sort of all those places where there have been breaches of personal data. Steps need to be taken by government, by regulators, to strike a balance. We must also remember that we don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. E-commerce has its uses. It creates opportunities, again, for teaming youths who can sit down and provide services across the world. I mean, it is the backbone. This outsourcing using the internet has been the backbone of the growth and the explosion of the Indian market around software and certain capabilities. So while we leverage on this, and we must be deliberate in leveraging on it, but we also have a responsibility to always strike the right tone. It comes from knowledge, spending time in research. We need to make the right investments so that we're able to build out.
I just wondered, part of what he just said now, it's good news that the Nigeria Data Protection Regulations have been issued. Because on Good Morning Nigeria, and when we're just discussing the growth, of e-governance, that there was a multiplicity of avenues by which your personal information data could be collected. Telephone service providers will ask for information up to that of your grandfather. Embassies will ask for the same information. Driver's license will ask for that. INEC is registering you. They will ask for that. A bank is doing that. They will ask for that. So it was just all out there.
Yeah, they're all out there. In fact, I was engaged by one fraudster, because I was convinced at a point that he is one. He said as a lady, he lives in the UK and what have you. But when he started asking me about my next of kin, I said, but what are you doing with my next of kin? Because I said, look, you are sounding like a criminal. And he went off. He went off and he didn't tell you. So it is like that. Let's come back to our friend here, Tobe. Tobe, fraud of any kind is actually an intent. It's a purposeful intent by a person or persons, determined to utilize some techniques. techniques of deception and trickery to get you. And these transactions are online. How can the financial managers or in financial institutions, how can they tackle this? Is there any leeway for them to track transactions before they become crime? Because invariably, we are talking about exchanging of information about your data and what have you. Yes, like Kinsley rightly pointed out, you have to do that in so many areas of life. Like if you're engaging in an interview, or what have you, your email and all of that will be demanded and what have you. Now, in the course of transaction, any transaction, is there any possibility that managers of financial institutions can, say, look, this is a suspect, let's track it and see what happens?
Well, of course, there's the EFCC and the NFIU, they get some reports from banks, regarding what they call suspicious transaction. There are times when they look at an account and then if there's a certain spike, a certain unusual spike in the activities on an account, it behoves on them. And they know that if they don't do the reporting and, a crime is reported on that account or an investigation is carried out, the bank itself is liable. So, and of course, some of these things have been designed in their systems to trigger themselves. So it doesn't even have to do with the discretion of those who are managing it, who will probably, decide whether they want to reveal the information or not. Because the CEO is looking at what's going on. Of course, you see, you don't want to put people on that platform who are going to put you in trouble. But I must say quickly that, of course, we now live in the age where data is money, all right? Data is money. People are after data now, big time. And there's what they call big data as well. And big data is, for example, what you can get from Facebook, from Twitter, from what are people discussing. You can send some keyword search, to see what's the concern of people and all of that, But I want to quickly say, for the layman, if you use Yahoo, for example, Google is a bit better because Google will usually categorize your email, the priority mail, those ones that go into your inbox, then the social mail, then the one that has to do with marketing. So sometimes when you go on Google, you only see the mails that you're supposed to see. Yahoo is not like that. And so one of the things you see, usually that I see on my Yahoo sometimes is, you see a mail from your bank saying that, for example, recently they designed this one whereby they say your bank is debiting you with 18,000 naira for their magazine. And when you see that, say, why are they debiting me 18,000 for my magazine? Then they now there'll be a link there, something, you hover on it, you see that you can click on it to say maybe you want to protest this charge. When you click on it, there are several things that can happen. They can infect your computer with a virus, with malware, with all sorts. But sometimes what they do is they can infect you with there's what they call a keylogger. And that keylogger is such that they're looking for patterns of your password. So from that point, you click on that thing. Anything you type, somebody is recording it. Anything you type, somebody is recording it somewhere. And so they're looking for anything that has starts with a uppercase character, has some small case character, has some figures in it, has a star or something. This is looking like a password. So people have to be careful with that. Then also, you see, people. The whole thing about IT is that it's built on a very fragile, if you like, it's built on trust as well. Because if anybody sends you a mail today, one of the things I think people should look out for again is there's these people that send you a mail and they say, this is the invoice. Click on this. This is the invoice. We are processing your invoice. I've been trying to reach you. My boss said I should reach you. But this is the invoice. And sometimes you may be happy and say, oh, maybe this money they've been looking for, this is the person that's sending it to me. Usually when you look at the attachment they send, you see that sometimes you see a PDF file, but it's a very small file. It can be something like 9 kilobytes. If you click on that, it can be a malware, it can be a virus or worm. Difference between virus and worm, but Kasim can tell better than me, but one of them, I think a virus works even when your computer is shut down. You know, it begins to infect your files. And then the worm is when you're up and all of that, you know. So people have to be extremely careful with what they click on the internet. And of course, sometimes they work with greed. Like he said, you know, social engineering, they want to know you, they're drawing you close. They are kind of preparing your mind for when they will hit you. Now, they also start very small. When you look at all of those crimes that have been perpetrated, say like some of those ones on romance scams and so on, they tell you, look, we have this big money here, or I have this problem, but you know what? Just give me $10, just give me $15. They are starting. So you say, well, $15 is manageable. Before you know it, another $20, $200. Before you know it, you are in too deep. Now you're trying to get your money out, and they're telling you, look, you have to invest some more.
Okay,
So basically, that's how it works.
Just before we take this short break, between Tokbe and, in fact, any of the three of you could take this. We're talking about how the fraudster lures in the victim. Now, if you recall, before, again, we started seeing more and more of e-transactions, at some point, you were advised not to issue a check to just anybody. Because they could go around to they scan your signature and then, you know, get a dot check or something, or get a specimen of your check and sign off. Is there any risk, because I've read some things I'm not quite clear, is there any risk in also making bank transfers to accounts? It's okay. Via your phone, it's okay. I mean, I transact a business with you, Kasim. I mean, I know you. So, okay, I mean, instead of carrying Naira on my pocket, I make a transfer to you. Is it advisable to do that with any person with whom you have transacted business? Is there a risk of you making a transfer and then the recipient using whatever information available from that transfer to harm you financially?
Let me quickly chip in there. There's one, and I'll give it to the EFCC guys. One of the things that happen usually, you know, Nigeria is the one wonderful place where people, you want to withdraw from your ATM, you give your driver, and even you write your password and say, or you give anybody. I mean, it's wonderful, you know, because elsewhere
economy is foolish.
They'll tell you that, look, don't use your date of birth. Don't use your children's date of birth. Don't use the same password for all your cards. Never. Don't keep your card in one place. All your cards. Don't keep all of them in one place. All this idea we keep them in wallets and we're walking around with them. Very dangerous. If anybody grabs that, it's a tome of information. The one I want to say is this. People go to the I've seen this instance with the EFCC. People go to the ATM to withdraw, and someone comes and tells you, sorry, sir, I've been trying to withdraw. I can't withdraw. Can I transfer money to your account and you help me withdraw the cash? Usually, that person has done a fraud somewhere. The money is sitting in his account. He does a transfer to you. You withdraw. The EFCC links you with that person. You have to explain how you're not the person that did that fraud.
Kano.
For me, making a transfer online is normal. And doing that does not give whoever you're transferring money to information, your personal information. It doesn't give them the opportunity to get your personal information. I think what's really a problem is when you allow your information, personal information or your banking information, you give it out to other persons. That's when it becomes a problem, and that's when they can access your account. So online transfer is not really a problem on its own.
Well, like he said, that simply transacting may not pose any risks. But like Mr. Faso has alluded to, wider practices around these transfers, some of the more social things we do with our accounts, our recklessness at ATMs, the people we share our banking information with, even where we think we think it's expedient, you know. It is the habits, you see. It is our habits around these things that expose us. We must also understand that, you know, there's for the electronic criminal, he's very patient. It's a business of patience. You know, he might go 10 days without getting any serious information. He may collect remotely, and then suddenly a few things fall into place. And then he makes the hammer, as it is known. You see? So we must understand that. Like, again, that's why I try not to because we've said to ourselves, instead of, sometimes the information is too much. Where how do you train society on worms, viruses, VPNs, all, So what we just say is that we focus on social habits, social habits, and the need. Our society, in some sense, there's low trust. In some sense, there's also high trust. Because of how we've lived in communities over the years,
Yeah. All right, Kasim, Sodangi, we'll pause it for now.
That's okay.
Let's take a short break. We've been talking for nearly an hour now. So let's have a break. But when we return, we'll be concluding this conversation. Very important conversation. And of course, we'll have revelations coming from professionals who are here with us this morning on the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires pushing yourself. It requires putting in more. That's why the new improved Bornvita is packed with vitality and a great taste.
I don't wash my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you going to yarn? What did the yarn serve? I don't understand though.
Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Militants is there. You know me, I not do again sound. Because why? Change begins with me.
General Tombu!
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back, analysts. Still, Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We have a number of tweets that have come in. Kirian, let's go over the tweets and then return to our guests. Mike Anyakwo. Electronic financial fraud is now prevalent all over the world, and Nigeria is no exception. My daughter, who is a student at a university in the U.S., recently fell victim as someone in faraway India fraudulently effected payment from a bank account. EFCC should be working with other international security agencies such as the FBI, Interpol, etc., to help in tracking and foiling these crimes. There is a saying that a rat in the house tells those in the bush that there is fish inside the house. Many of the frauds have insider collaboration.
It didn't complete, even among the bankers.
Well, said,
among top bankers. It's very important.
Well, said top.
Top bankers.
That's a serious allegation.
Well, it's an allegation that he made, right? And the monies are transferred into banks, isn't it? Exactly. All right, now, Dele Jack Solomon. Fraud on the mobile money services are caused by weak internal controls and systems, lack of sophisticated information technology tools to detect the menace, inadequate education and training, and the poor remuneration of employees who are found to impede the growth of mobile money service. In the fight for the prevention of fraud, banks should have in place sound internal control mechanisms.
Francis Obi, customers are careless too, in addition to the fact that the fraud might be caused by insiders. Customers drop their printout carelessly at places of transaction. My daughter suffered a similar thing with a bank, and up to now, the bank hasn't paid her back.
All right, and Law Alpha C, with the level of unemployment, economic downturn, get-rich-quick syndrome, frustration, etc., many people, particularly the youths, engage in cyber fraud, leaving various levels of government enormous work to provide jobs.
Festus Akimboye, we are sad that as electronic financial fraud is growing in Nigeria, so are its financial, social, and personal costs. Now, government, private sector, and banks must work together to come up with an uncompromising approach to combat the menace and create a hostile environment for the fraudsters.
Now, Law Alpha C, another form of electronic fraud emanates from the Nigerian banks who periodically make charges from customers for services not properly rendered or not rendered at all.
Leo Fadaka, it says electronic financial fraud is made possible by weak service providers' inscription and security ID pins. This is a challenge that must be tackled technologically by updating e-payments security. Usually there are moles within the chain of the financial system.
Now, Festus, again, banks should be forced to invest in new technology that can stop the criminals operating among their staff and customers. To Nigerians, don't ever disclose your login details and ensure you only visit a security website, as scammers can install software to gain access to your bank details.
Sani Michael Amakoji, we are the architect of our own misfortune, attributed to a porous system that is fertile for this fraud to go on without adequate regulation. Europe is now making a move to regulate blockchain and forex trading, but here we have overwhelming loopholes in our banking system.
Ibrahim Tudu, the electronic financial fraudsters have devised ways of sending credit alerts. Very rampant these days. You get a false alert for goods purchased purported to be from your bank. The way to know is this: it does not add to your bank account balance.
Okay, Badamasi Haruna Adamu tweets, now there should be a strong synergy between the security agencies within and across the country, such as the EFCC and FBI, etc., in order to curtail these frauds.
Now, Omobala says the biggest e-fraud today is committed by commercial banks. None of them is exempted, not even one. Banks today face a lot of fraud by whoever, but they in turn themselves into Yahoo because making Nigerians pay for their losses through frivolous charges. That's by Omobala, please.
Okay, now that's Stephen tweets. Yahoo is a crime of all nations, but our cyber laws should be strengthened. EFCC shouldn't be quick to show the faces of criminals, but conduct more widespread investigation so as to nab other accomplices, just as the FBI did.
Yeah, just a way to nab the network, because it's usually a network.
But there's an aspect to this. We keep talking about this. Sodenge said a while ago that, look, patience is probably the key currency, for operations in the cybercrime world. Let's say for those who are doing Yahoo. It requires an intelligent person to get into this. I mean, this is not a game for any person with a low IQ. And if we are seeing the extent of the involvement of some of our youngsters, is it possible to convert this intellectual capacity that they have into better ends? I recall that Ajijola, one of our regular guests also, was talking about a system in Switzerland that was being developed, and they invited hackers to hack it for a fee, to test the integrity of that system. Is there a way now, we can look at these guys, other than you saw what the police authorities were doing, not where some policemen on the beat, they see you with dreadlocks, they say you are a Yahoo. They see you with one expensive phone, they say you are a Yahoo. Is there a way we can rein in, the system can rein in these guys, as it were, download their I don't know, let me not say much that is necessary, apply their talents positively to enhance our cyber security and defense systems?
Absolutely. That's actually the next way forward. And, thankfully, Kazim here is the national coordinator for the local content in ICT for Nigeria. And this is very, very important. In fact, the other day, I had cause to say such a thing on Facebook. I said, look, I think rather than pursuing these people all over the place, it's come to a point where we need to just harness them and find a way of channeling them to positive things. You know why, sir? There are Yahoo schools all over Nigeria now, especially in the southwest. School of Yahoo. In Abeokuta, we have seen some of them busted. In Ibadan, schools where you go in and then you see 30 boys training for Yahoo. The other day, another guy showed in Ghana, Nigerian boys who went to Ghana. All of them were with their laptops. Some of them were already asleep. They had been walking through the night. Shirtless. And remember this, one of these musicians, I think it was Nice, who said, that some of his boys, the way he sang it in Yoruba, that some of his boys are walking through the night, they're sending mails. Sometimes, maybe, of course, that's the time when they're awake in US, for example. So you're awake when they're awake in the US. Anyway, so we have Yahoo schools now, where people go and they train to be Yahoo boys to graduate. We don't see when they graduate, but the training goes on. So to a large extent, again, it's down to an economic question that I've always raised. Are there job opportunities in Nigeria? I think there are. Why are we not creating them? I don't know. Because again, for example, even in the public sector alone, there's a lot we can do. I've always said, for example, if we obsess with our environmental sector alone in this country, I say, listen, we want to obsess with this environment. We want to make sure that every flower pot is where it's supposed to be. Every lawn that we have public is well mown. That we paint our bridges every other month and so on.
Plant trees and so on.
Yes, there's work in this country. For example, if we look at it from an economic angle, we talk about what they call public good in economics. And those things are things like education, things like health, things like security. We have jobs opportunities in these places. We don't have enough policemen, right? We have a problem with education. When I was campaigning, I traveled around the country. Most of our schools, if you find 3 teachers in those public schools where they have 6 classes, you are lucky in many parts. That means we have employment opportunities for teachers. And even if we employ the teacher, we also have employment opportunities in performance management, performance control. For example, people who will go and check what those who you have employed are doing. For example, the Empower system, was brought in almost all the schools I went. They will tell you, we have one Empower, but it doesn't come. So it's not enough to just pay this guy 30,000 at the end of the month or whatever you are paying them. But is someone ensuring? So look, a lot of it has to do with organizing ourselves. We wouldn't have this problem with xenophobia, our people in South Africa being chased around. It's just, all of this is just telling us one thing. Whether in South Africa or in US, all of these are boys and girls that are having issues. Or you go to Italy, in Greece, we have a problem with our girls going there for prostitution. We have people running across the Sahara Desert. Do you know how many Nigerians are dying in that desert every day? So there's opportunity for employment in Nigeria, and until those opportunities are harnessed, we'll continue to have these issues.
All right, thank you. Kasim, you want to come in? Okay, come in.
If I can just add, cybercrime is becoming a very big industry in Nigeria. And employment appears to be a solution, but employment cannot be a solution to all of the problems that we have, especially as it concerns cybercrime. Because most of the people that are involved in cybercrime are not in the labor market. Most of them are students in schools. And a high number is on the increase. If you know the number of students in tertiary institutions that are involved in cybercrime, I think it's a cause for concern. It's on the increase, and it's a big problem.
Well, wait, you can pick out the geniuses from the schools, and redirect their creative energies. Kasim.
And I was going to ask Kasim, rather, what is NIDA doing? I have had the privilege of covering NIDA, for a while. As a reporter, and I know the capacity, that's domiciled in NIDA. Now, what are you doing in terms of developing local softwares that should be indigenous to Nigeria, that we can utilize even in our own cyberspace to do what you would call about, cyber security and what have you? Is it not a possibility, knowing the kind of, brains that we have in NIDA, because we have a number of them. You're among, and I've met others too, who can do something about this?
Thank you. In direct response to that question, sometime in 2013, NIDA rightly observed that there was a need not to be passive in waiting for technology to accelerate or to build up or develop. And in the first place, that was why the NIDA Act. I argue that the NIDA Act was the first local content act in Nigeria. What it sought to do was to catalyze and supercharge the development of indigenous technology. We'll have stuck to a converged regulator like you have in other climes. But they said, no. There was a need to do more in terms of creating local opportunities and being deliberate about it. In 2013, NIDA spun off 2 key ideas. One is the office I manage, which is the Office for Nigerian Content Development. Our principal function is to work from the demand side. We're saying, what are the needs of society? What are the anticipated needs of society and the public sector? What are the needs? What are the things that we would have to spend money on, or we could spend money on? How do we ensure in future terms, Nigerians are prepared to provide technologically, information technology-wise, are able to provide the needs that we need and to plug those gaps? So the primary function of my office is to ensure that on all the demand side apertures in Nigeria, that there's a specific recognition of where Nigerian skills are needed and we plug. So what we've done is that our programs are geared towards, one, being able to use change management and information and regulations and executive orders like the 003 and 005 on local content and procurement of local technology in partnership with other agencies of government to mandate a purchase of certain capabilities exclusively that are Nigerian and that exist. We have made some progress, but there's a need to accelerate that. Recently, the current Minister of Communication has directed that NIDA redoubles its effort, and there's a strong emphasis on that. There's also the Office for ICT, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, run by Dr. Amina Sambo, another SPV, a special purpose vehicle of NIDA, that has the mandate to support the hubs and startups in being able to bring in more people in within the hub. Because essentially what we have are hubs that are preparing people, incubating people for negative things. Mm-hmm. There's a need to accelerate this hub experience. There are some, and some have made significant inputs, but there's a need to accelerate, the development of these hubs and capabilities to accommodate more talents, to the lowest. You see, the thing about technology is that a child in primary 5 who is extraordinarily gifted with numerics can do things that someone who has been trying to do it for 40 years is unable to achieve. We've seen companies being spun off by teenagers who have unique capabilities, who just understand the numbers game.
I'm just wondering, Kasim.
To just round up, I'll say that because technology is not an industry that sits to itself, it's an enabler. What NIDA and the Ministry of Communications is doing is the tip of the iceberg. We need to see the chain effect across all sectors, from environment, finance. Finance has caught up. There's so much more to do. Health, education. Technology is pervasive. So we need to invest and unlock far more capital than we're doing to drive. There's in the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, there's a whole plank for technology and investments. But we need to unlock and invest. See, technology doesn't happen overnight without the necessary investments that go in. It is intellectual property. To develop human talent requires a period of just sowing, if I'm to use those expressions.
Historically speaking, there is no nation globally that has prospered or has become a great nation without indigenous technology.
And
it has not happened anywhere.
And let me add quickly, investing, you see, we speak about the internet in the form that we forget that 005, 03 mandated local content, 05 mandated even the purchase of scientific and information technology from Nigerians. But more has to go in. These are policy frameworks. It now needs to cascade to actionable plans. I have seen the approach the current Minister of Communication has taken. He has come up with a broad plan mandating specific.
Whatever you are doing in communication,